淡くて儚いシャボン玉のような恋心。空を望めばやがて壊れて消えるように、少女の思いは虚しく叶わなかった。流した涙は血の色となって生贄を求め、口をついた悲しみは怒りとなって殺意を生み出してゆく。純粋すぎる黒はすべてを飲み込んで闇を広げる。やがては自分自身さえも。目明かし。生まれてこなければよかったのか。血みどろの手は虚空すらつかめなかった。
AD 1983. The fourth year of the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa, also known as Oyashiro's Mouse Curse, 1 year after Satoshi Hojo's disappearance. I'm trying to remember. I could have sworn blood was like Aka, but no. Blood was a cheat, I think. So what the fuck is... So then what is Meakashi? Maybe we'll find out what it means later on. Anyway. So this takes place now in 1983, so Keiichi should be showing up at some point. We've kind of been filled into what happened to Satoshi, so now we're probably going to see whatever happens to Keiichi. I hadn't been able to get used to my new school in Okinomiya, but I had some friends there now. Since I got a part-time job at my relative's store, I had some extra pocket money too. I ended up living with my parents after all, so I didn't have to pay for living expenses. It felt great to get to freely spend the money I earned from working. I still used the room Kasai set up for me from time to time. It was a convenient hideout for when I didn't want to see my parents. In fact, I was planning to spend a day there today. My dad got upset, and that was why I didn't want to stay at home. I'd been asking for it though. My teacher should know that my dad is a Yakuza, and that he'd get really scary when he's mad. On the whole, my life had been going well so far, except that it was boring. The reason I could enjoy this lifestyle was probably because I had to live in secret before. Wait. Yeah. It was a great relief to be able to live without having to fake my identity. Well, that might have been a valuable experience. I think I learned from it. I was going grocery shopping, and I thought I'd get enough food for a week or so. My parents would appreciate my presence more after missing me for a week. I was doing this for their sakes. I knew how to save my pocket money. I was in a good mood. I spun around with my arms spread out. I felt like I was inside a little whirlwind. Is she gonna smack someone? My arm hit a again? My arm hit a motorcycle parked on the sidewalk. It obviously wasn't where it was supposed to be. What the fuck? Again? I gave the motorcycle a kick. Yeah, again. Yeah, there were 3 lined up in a row, and all fell like dominoes. Yes, this is all... We've read this before. It was beautiful and so much fun. Oh? This was odd. I felt like I'd gone through the exact same experience before. While blinking my eyes in an effort to recall when that was, some people grabbed me by the neck and dragged me into a dark alley. It looked like these punks were the owners of those motorcycles. They started shouting at me. This really was strange. I was having deja vu. Yeah, we've heard this. I'm gonna skip ahead a tiny bit. That's right. It was when I met Satoshi for the first time. He came to save me. If I pretended to cry again now, would he come to save me again? I made a wish, and I started pretending to cry and beg for mercy. At that time, I doubted my tears. Here he is! Who could it be? Oh, I wonder. Yonder I wonder who this might be. Who might this dashing young fellow be?
もう泣いてるじゃねえかよ。
It was a boy about my age. I couldn't quite see his face because of the light illuminating him from behind.
サトシくん
Of course it couldn't be him. It couldn't be. Look at him. He looks so weird. He looks like he looks like the singer of like a new metal band from 2003. He's got like cargo pants, a vest, and eyeliner on. Anyway, here's Keiichi. Here's his console sprite, which looks a lot more normal. Just a dude with, you know, a shirt. Oh, God, that looks disgusting. That looks so fucking vile. Oh, Keiichi, they really did you dirty. The face looks relatively normal, and then your arms are so well toned. Like you've got such a muscular body for a guy that like can barely cook for himself and mainly eats like, you know, pork ginger like ramen. That looks so gross. But this doesn't look too bad. This is very charming. Anyway. He looked less gracious than Satoshi, so to speak. If Satoshi was pristine and untouched, then this guy would have scratches all over him. But although they were completely different, I got a similar impression from him somehow. That's a very interesting description of Keiichi, because I don't believe he's ever been described in the series at all. As in, I don't think they ever mentioned what he looks like. As in, they never used any descriptors for him. Here, this guy would have scratches all over him. That's a very interesting way to describe Keiichi. Hmm.
んじゃおらいいとこ見たっつんかよらゲット痛い目見せなっすんとかいシャラスかったんぞあ
The boy looked a bit taken aback. Sorry I'm skipping their dialogue. We've heard it before.
いやもう泣いてるんだからそれくらいで勘弁してあげてもいいんじゃないかななんて
He immediately backs off. This is more like the Keiichi I pictured. Like this version of him. More docile and more passive. He also has like... I assume it's supposed to be his eyelids. Like above his eyes. How to word it? If you look at the outline for his eye, right? He has like one eyelash sticking out of each eye. So that's already like one thing. Then he's got like another, like an eyelid or something above his eye. And then he's got his eyebrows. Usually, like, you don't normally see eyelids like that on, you know, characters, just overall. So there's, like, no point to it, if that makes sense. Usually the eyebrows are what are, you know, what's really expressive for all these characters, but anyway.
あんなことを命にされとんじゃおら
Yeah.
たま暴力は良くないぜ
What's up with this guy? I felt ashamed that I mistook him for Satoshi even for a second. He seemed cool at first, but he wasn't cool. He wasn't as cool as Satoshi after all.
いやだからバイクが倒れたのはお気の毒と思いますよでもですねどうか機嫌を直されてですねどうしたら機嫌を直してくださるんですかねいやもちろん私たちはお金なんか持ってないんですがね
おおそうじゃの金がのうならっしゃー体で払ってもおっかないっちゃなこんなよう見ると結構イケてるもんなどうじゃこの後
Hey, are you kidding me? I tightened my grip on the stun gun in my pocket. Then I turned it up to maximum intensity. Don't hold a grudge against me if you die, pervs.
おお、俺さ、一度可愛い子ちゃんはべらせて街のべりたくてさ。おお、ルーシー、もっと着飾ってスカートもミニで。興奮さ。
They indulge in their imaginations, which arouse their spirits. Hey now, why are you perverts closing in on me? Your gross hands are groping the air. Are you gonna try and violate me?
タイトミニもええのミニミニはっしゃ上から下まで全部色っぽくしゃよ肌色の面積を限りなく広げて萌え萌えの姿にしちゃるけ
あんたら冗談でしょその汚い手で私に触れるな
Then a flash of light cut through the air. Was that the boy?
このボケなすどもが
Blows like thunderbolts knocked the punks down. Wow, so he was actually strong after all.
なあ何しいてこまされたいんか
お前らは分かっていない分かっていない
何がじゃ
タイトミニには萌えがない
Of course.
そして肌色面積は控えめにたとえお天道様が西から昇ることがあろうとも絶対これは萌え業界の鉄則だいいかよく聞けど素人どもホモ・サピエンスと動物の違いは何かそう衣服の着用だつまり人は肌以外の衣服の彩りがあって初めて人なのだつまり肌色を求めすぎる貴様らは人以下動物と同じだ
God damn it,
貴
Keiichi.
様ら全員を強制する歯を食いしばれ先ほどタイトミニを引き合いに出したな例えばここに美少女と呼ぶにふさわしい女の子がいたとする美少女と一言に言ってもその裾野は広すぎる
He's not saying cosplay, he's saying bishoujo. Unless I missed whatever word he used for cosplay, and he said something like, I don't know, like kos instead, like bishoujo kos. And maybe that's like some shorthand for it, but I'm hearing bishoujo, which just means like beautiful woman.
それについて貴様らに抗議することは寿司山芸者から入った外国人に侍の美学を一から説明するより困難この上極まりないだからここでは最も普及していると思われる制服系で説明することとする制服系の御三家といえば何か答えてみろそうだな制服体操服スクール水着だろうなおセーラーかブレザーかの好みの違いは制服にカテゴライズするものとするもちろんブルワーかスパッツかの違いも同様すく水も紺か白かの違いはあるぞカテゴリーは同じ扱いだどうだこれだけでも甘美な響きがするであろうではお前ら3人がこれらのうちの一つずつが好みであったと仮定しようおい不良 A お前は制服だ不良 B お前は体操服そして不良 C はすく水だ頭に思い描け時間は3秒描けたか妄想くらい自在にできろ気合が足りんやり直すではお前らの望む美少女がここにいてその衣装を着ているぞあると思えあると信じろ気合を入れ返事は押すかさあイエスサーだバカ者それでも軍人かよーし描けたようだな次に進むぞそれらの萌え衣装と貴様らの馬鹿げた浴場に従いお色気ムンムンなタイトミニスカート姿を見比べてみろ
This is so fucking dumb. Now think, if you take all their clothes off, that's not cosplay anymore, is it?
最近まだ萌えと色気の違いのわからん未熟者が増えているが実に嘆かわしい
Humans without clothes aren't civilized, they're animals.
本能でしか女性の魅力を語れない貴様らは犬猿キジだきびだんごでももらって鬼ヶ島へでも失せろ Get back here! ちなみに最近の東西雪解けに従い萌えもいろいろな類が大量に上陸しているな
Okay, I wasn't expecting a lecture on the, like, gravoire, like, industry in 1983's Japan, but I guess here we are.
そんなことも知らんのか愚か者は制服系と金髪を掛け合わせてアニメ系などという酸素と水素が掛け合わされて能登半島かわいいよ大爆発なんて組み合わせが出ているようだが本館は断じて認めたりはしないぞ
Which is a combination of the Japanese uniform fetish and some Russian thing.
制服は日本の文化だ芸術だ和洋折衷はこの世界には存在しない貴様ら聞いているのか軟弱スルメどもが歯を食いしばれ今日は徹底的にしごく貴様らが真の萌え文化を理解できるまで今日は寝られないと思えはい指導指導指導
At that point, I heard a bustle of people running this way.
前原さんみんな呼んできました
Okay, they're not showing their sprite. I saw several kids running towards us. Seems like our backup had arrived.
やばいぞ繋がれ
The three punks had just been standing there agape, but they started running away when they saw that many people.
さすが前原さんですねたった一人であんな怖そうな3人組を釘付けにしちゃうなんて
Like you can't see me right now, but like I have my hand towards my forehead, and I'm just like standing here, or well, sitting here, baffled, and kind of like confused, but like also in awe. Like Shion was about to be sexually assaulted. Keiichi only retaliated because they said they wanted to strip her naked completely, even taking her socks off, and that's what set him off. That's what set him off. Because to him, the epitome of cuteness and culture and all this is the Japanese sailor uniform, or even then, the fact that socks should be on during sex. So he spent like 5 minutes lecturing these guys while smacking them over the head. What the fuck, Keiichi?
3人の一人鼻血出してましたね前原さん喧嘩も強いなんてすごいです尊敬し
And here he is smiling.
俺の固有結界もますます磨きがかかったようだな今に監督の固有結界メイドインヘブンに太刀打ちできるくらいに磨きをかけてやるぜとそんなことはいいや
Okay, so when does this take place? I know you might be like if you're watching, but you know, if you've been casually following the series, you might be confused like, well, what do you mean? Right? Like, well, it takes place in 1983. Yeah, but like when in 1983? He didn't meet Coach, I believe, until chapter 2. Or was it 3 when Satoshi was introduced? I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was way after chapter 1. And the events of chapter 1 set up his relationship with the kids in school. Like, you know, his classmates, Mion, Satoko, everyone. So this takes place after that. So it's still the summer. And it's a little bit into June at least. He's already met Coach, which means I think he's already been to Angel Mort at least once. No, because he goes to Angel Mort for the first time with his father. So he hasn't been there, but he's met Coach. Okay.
大丈夫かよ、ミオン。
Also, the Made in Heaven is a reference to Made in Heaven, M-A-D-E, from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which it should be from Part 4, which was popular in the 90s. That's when it was written. Yes, it was written in the mid 90s. So definitely not a thing here yet in like their world, but definitely a thing that Ryukishi was probably either had read or was well acquainted with back when this was written in like 2005. The boy was apparently called Maebara. He turned around to face me. Even the way he mistook me for Mion sounded like Satoshi. But Satoshi isn't a pervert like him.
天下ごめんのミオンがどんな情け容赦のない必殺技で撃退してみせるかちょっと楽しみにして見てたんだぜ。
But here he is smiling. Oh god. He has bushier eyebrows in the console version.
まあさすがに男が3人がかりじゃきつかったってことかそんなわけないよな
I was still confused, but I couldn't yet grasp the situation. Who was this guy? Mion has friends like him? I was still spacing out in shock, so I forgot to move until his hand touched my head.
まあなんだ半べそ書いてたのは見なかったことにするからさまあ元気出せよな
The boy called Maebara stroked my head roughly. It didn't feel good. It hurt, actually. But still, his hand had the same warmth. Later on, Mion told me about him. He was called Keiichi Maebara. Kei-chan for short. He's one grade below us. Not only that, but he just moved to Hinamizawa. Thanks to his attitude and lack of manners, he'd already become an idol in their class. Mion joyously explained all of this. Sure, he sounded like a fun kid. I knew why Mion was into him, but Satoshi was way cooler. He wasn't worth stealing from Sis. Or was he? My heart throbbed. I was excited. I felt like I'd gotten a new toy. I was curious as to what kind of relationship Mion intended to build with him. I'd love to tease her about it.
ありがとう、ケイちゃん。よかったらお礼にお茶でもおごるよ。
See, here she sounds like Mion. They
す
love
ぐ近
pulling
く
this
にお
shit.
じさんの店があるし、どう？
Satoshi would refuse out of modesty. Keiichi said okay within 2 seconds. Well then, I couldn't wait to tease the two of them. My boring life suddenly became bright again.
おい腕なんかにしがみつくなよ
あれ？こういうの嫌いですか？
いや嫌いじゃないけど胸が当たって
胸が当たって何ですって？
Keiichi Maebara was fun. Mion thought the same way I did. She would always talk about him. I was happy for her. It made me
お
smile.
姉はケイちゃんのこと本当に気に入ってますね。ズバリ。ケイちゃんの魅力を一言で示すと何です？そうだね。もしも一言でしか言っちゃいけないなら、やっぱり面白いとこかな。そうそう、この間の部活の時にさ。
Mion really liked him, but didn't seem to think it was love yet. She's reserved in that area, so so that was really like her. As for me, well, I didn't hate him, but my feelings weren't the same as Mion's. Kei-chan was just too childish compared to Satoshi. I wondered how Satoshi was doing. Was he waiting for things to cool down somewhere far away? The case had already been solved, though. That dopehead was the murderer. There was no reason for him to wait anymore. I shook my head. I shouldn't think about it too much. Oh wait, I know. The case was confidential, so the arrest of the culprit hadn't been made public. So Satoshi hadn't realized that he could come back. I know he's a little thick-headed. Maybe he'd be waiting for things to calm down until the end of time. But if so, couldn't he give a call to Satoko at least? You should tell her he's living in a faraway place, but that he'd be coming home soon. Ah, that stupid Satoko. She'd been living with Rika Furude since Satoshi went away, so nobody would pick up the phone even if he called. Ah, stupid girl. Don't you want your big brother to come home? Given Satoshi's personality, he wouldn't remember any phone numbers other than his home phone number, so he wouldn't be able to contact anybody in Hinamizawa. Maybe he's been calling Satoko every night. He keeps ringing, but nobody picks up. Then he'd assume Satoko might be taking a bath or be in the restroom. He'd put on a puzzled smile, mumbling, like always.
ム
I imitated his voice without
ー
realizing
それ
it.
でそれで
え
何何どうしたの今シオン何か言わなかった
I laughed it off and urged Mion to continue. I realized then that her tone had changed. I hadn't been listening to her because I was thinking of Satoshi. I thought she was still happily talking about Kei-chan, but Mion sounded grim now. Her faint smile looked pitiful. It was too late to ask what was going on, so instead I concentrated on her story instead.
でねおじさんが今日は盛り上げてくれてありがとうって言って売り物のお人形をみんなに一個ずつ配ったの
Okay. So this is at some point after the first Sunday, which is day 1 of chapter 2.
私以外の全員にお姉以外の全員にねそりゃあ私も欲しかったけどさみんなの手前私にもちょうだいとは言い出せなかったし相変わらずお姉は自分の欲しいものを欲しいと言えない人ですねそれで
Mion sniffled. I realized that she was on the verge of tears.
ケイちゃんの袋にはね一番可愛いお人形が入っててそのお人形が一番欲しかったってわけ別に何のお人形だってよかったんだよケイちゃんは私だけもらってないって知ってたのに私にくれなかったミオンには似合わないよなって言って次に生まれてくるときは男に生まれてこいそう言われたんだよ言われたんだよ
That was Keiichi's weak point. He might be fun and popular, but he wasn't mature. Not like Satoshi.
やり直したいケイちゃんに出会った最初の頃からやり直して今度はちゃんと女の子だと思ってもらえるようにやり直したいおねえ深刻すぎですってお姉がやり直したいと思ってしかも向こうが何もトラブってない状態なら全然セーフじゃないですか互いに傷つき合ってただれちゃうとまあやり直しも面倒でしょうがやり直せるかなケイちゃんの前で涙を流してないならそもそも何も手遅れじゃないんですお姉がこの場で適当に涙して明日から心を入れ替えていけば修正可能ですってそりゃケイちゃんのデリカシーのなさには呆れますけどその結果は結局今日までのお姉の積み重ねてきた結果なわけですから今日からの生活を少しずつ改めてポイントを稼ぎ直せばいいだけのことです生活を改めるってどうやってお姉に可愛らしくしろって言うと明日からフリフリの格好で登校しかねませんからね変に構えないで普段通りに行きましょうでも細かい部分でこれまでの違いを見せていくそこがさりげないポイントあと人形をもらったレナという子には釘を刺しておくこと現在のケイちゃんの中ではお姉よりもレナの方が高ポイントの可能性が高いです確かにレナは女の子っぽいしな可愛いし海外しいしライバルがいるならうかうかできませんよお姉涙は男を引き寄せる力がありますけどつなぎ止めておく力はありません 普段は笑っててポイントで泣く。萌えの典型パターンの一つかもです。私もケイちゃんに実践してみるかな。
That's a very interesting line, actually. Tears can attract men, but they don't anchor them. And yet, what she said to an extent is true. Like, imagine if you're seeing a girl, and she cries constantly. And I mean like all the fucking time. If you truly love her, you'll look past that, right? But if you're just getting to know this chick, it might make you think, oh man, she's like very, 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 very sensitive. And it might be kind of annoying after a while, because you'll be able to see it coming if you're paying attention. Like, anything that you might do, or anything you might say, or if you behave in a specific way, you might be able to tell, oh man, this is gonna make her cry if I say this. And you might be regretting, like, just going down that path if you've already started in the conversation and so on. That's just a very interesting line. So I guess, to any chicks watching, take note. Maybe. If you're gonna cry in front of a guy, try to do it when it counts. Anyway.
ダメだよ、ダメ。お姉が気に入る男の子ですからね。私が気に入らない道理はありませんから。さーて、ケイちゃんをどう引き込んでみせようかな。なんならお姉、どっちがケイちゃんの気を引けるか競争しましょうか。やだやだ、もう絶対やだ。シオン、ひなみ沢に来たら追い返す。
I'm happy for you, sis. It's not too late at all. It's important to know the distance between the boy you love and yourself, and shift the way you appeal to him to compensate. The boy I love is missing, you know? I don't even know where he is, or when he's coming back. Compared to that, you're very lucky. Mion was saying she'd do her best from tomorrow on with red, tearful eyes, but I sensed a deeply negative feeling emerging inside me. Nobody was blaming Mion for being happy with Keiichi. I wasn't envious. I wasn't jealous. I didn't want her to be blamed the same way I was blamed. It was just that there was no space for Satoshi in Mion's mind anymore. Filled as it was with Kei-chan and her other friends now. It didn't matter to her if Satoshi came back or not. Just like how she didn't care if it was sunny or rainy tomorrow. Just like how she didn't care if it was sunny or rainy tomorrow. I don't think that has anything to do with Chapter 4. I'm pretty sure it was heavily implied that Chapter 4 was all about Rika having those thoughts. Maybe this is just, you know, it's just like a metaphor. Or sorry, it's a simile of how, you know, she's feeling. Maybe that specific line doesn't have much to do with the story. Anyway, let's move on. What about me then? Had I been thinking about Satoshi all this time for the past year? I wasn't proud of my own answer. I'd become used to life without Satoshi. His absence didn't hurt me anymore. I was getting used to life with Keiichi. And if I let my guard down, he might just fill up the space I've been saving for Satoshi. If Shion had prayed harder for Satoshi to return, he might have come home already. Where did Satoshi go? Last year, right after his disappearance, I paid close attention to the information circulating the Sonozuki family and its underground connections, and I frequently went to the police station to check with Oishi for new information. Even with all that, I couldn't get any new leads on his whereabouts. I eventually became interested in Oyashiro-sama's curse, which surrounded Satoshi's disappearance. I researched the dark history of the village. The more I looked into it, the less likely his survival seemed. I'd returned Mio's scrapbook to her, and then I hadn't gone to the library since. I started a new life in a new school. I'd made new friends, and in the same way, as falling leaves cover the ground, I felt like I was losing sight of what was really important to me. It was already almost the end of spring. They said that summer was coming early and it'd be very hot this year. Normally it'd be the rainy season now, but we'd had no rain at all. The Watanagashi festival was right around the corner. It'd been almost a year since Satoshi went missing. In Hinamizawa, they don't allow you to talk openly about Oyashiro-sama's curse or the series of mysterious deaths. So everybody acts like the murder of Satoshi's aunt never happened. That's because Satoshi Hojo was a member of a family of traitors. He fell victim to Oyashiro-sama's curse on the 4th year running. He was demoned away. Everybody was trying to forget about his existence and erase their memories of him. Don't make him disappear because of the curse. Don't erase his existence. Satoshi was living in Hinamizawa just a year ago. He went to school. He was an A student. He was a member of the Hinamizawa Fighters. He could never hit the ball when it really mattered. He was unreliable but pure. He was warm. Because of the curse, people made him disappear. They stopped mentioning his name and acted like he never existed. A new resident like Keiichi Maebara wouldn't even know him. He seriously believed that Satoshi had transferred out. I miss you, Satoshi. I want to go shopping with you again. I want to be in a baseball game with you again and get a cold drink afterwards. I want to tease you and I want you to stroke my head again. Your hand was so warm. I felt as if my whole body was being caressed. Satoshi. Aw, she misses him. I haven't opened this notebook in a while. My feelings have been written down for over 150 pages. This notebook is the key to my heart. The other me who's been sleeping since last year is slowly waking up. Notebook page 150.
まったく、ケイチさんのドスケベぶりには呆れましてよ。男の子なら仕方がないのですよ。みーちゃんもしーちゃんもケイチくん困ってるよ。
ですってよ、お姉。大岡越前じゃあるまいし、このままケイちゃんが引きちぎれるまで引っ張りっこします。
That's Shion's voice.
引っ張りっこなんかしてないよ。シオンが引っ張らなければ済むことでしょ。
I think I remember this scene from chapter 2 as well. Ugh.
シオンは沖宮に帰れ。はい、了解。そうしますね。パッと。
I let go of Keiichi suddenly, so he and Sis flew off like a rubber band. Keiichi rolled on the ground while Sis was stuck in a bush head first. What lively people.
じゃあケイちゃん、これ以上からかうとお姉に噛みつかれかねないので、今日はこれで帰りますね。
あ、シオン、そのさ、今日はありがとな。
ああ、あんなのお安いご用です。あの程度で恩が着せられるならいくらでもってくらいに。
じゃあまたな、シオン。
His hand landed on my head. Rub, rub, rub. He stroked my head pretty roughly, but the warmth reminded me.
じゃあすみませんね。今日は失礼します。
Is this how he was like stroking Satoko's head? Because the way it's being described, it's like he's patting her the way a boy is usually pat on the head. Like, you know, when like a dad puts his hand on his son's head and he just like ruffles his hair a little bit. It feels like that's how, or it's being described almost as if that's how Keiichi is being with Shion.
またね、お姉。二度と来るなー。レナは紹介。サトコはトラ。リカちゃんは塩巻いて。
The warmth remained on the top of my head. It felt ticklish and sore. I had to stop. I got off my moped and pushed that aching spot against a telephone pole. I'm sorry, Satoshi. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I never forgot about you. I still remember you. I'm worthless without you. I can't stand life without you because it's gray and cold and boring. It's true. I can never smile because you aren't here. I can't.
じゃあまたな、シオン。
Keiichi's face appeared in my mind. I recalled the touch of his hand stroking my head. It wasn't warm. It wasn't happy. It was rough and painful. I hate that insensitive guy. He's too childish, rude, and cold. He acts like he's like a stray dog. I wasn't happy. It wasn't warm. I wasn't happy or overjoyed at all.
サトシ、サトシ。
Satoshi mumbled. He didn't know what to say in a situation like this, but he knew that he had better say something. but he knew that he had better say something. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. So he just mumbled. I'm sorry, Shion. Why are you apologizing, Satoshi? I'm the one who should apologize. Even though I said I'd wait for you, even though I believed my heart wouldn't change, my heart is full of holes. You're leaking out from the small cracks in my heart little by little. You're leaking out from me. Are you suffering because I'm here? Why? You're so precious to me. So don't say that. I've been here with you all this time. But I think I'm hurting you continuing to exist. I don't want that. That's not true. No, no, no. Where have you been, Satoshi? You weren't with me. Tell me where you are. What's the address? What's the postal code? What's the name of the city? What's the street number? Tell me. There isn't an address. I knew it. Telling me you've always been with me, always by my side. That's such a cliche. Which do you prefer, Shion? If I can give you strength, I'll stay by your side forever. But if you're suffering because of me, I'll disappear right away.
そんなこと言わないでよ。一緒がいい。一緒がいいよ。サトシ君といつまでも一緒がいい。
Okay. I'll stay with you then. A car passed by. The noise snapped me out of my reverie. The sky was turning orange. I should get home before it gets cold. I should go home to Okinoya. You're with me, right? Are you with me right now, Satoshi? I walked back to my moped. My feet sank into the grass. I stopped when I reached my bike, but then I heard an extra footstep. I gasped. I could feel somebody else's presence. I'm not stupid. Nobody else was around here. Nobody had suddenly appeared behind me. So I wasn't surprised to find nobody when I turned around. But he was definitely still there.
サトシ君。
I couldn't see him, but he was there. He was there for me. Satoshi never lies. He said he'd been with me all this time. I'd just been too insensitive to feel his existence until now.
サトシ君。サトシ君。
A breeze tickled my hair. It felt cold, but to me it was nothing but the warmth of his hand. It took me a while to notice that my cheeks were wet with tears. Is Shion going insane? Is that the halfway mark? Yes, okay. Also, hey Lethal Kate. Thanks for stopping by over on the kick side. I was too scared to sleep. If I went to sleep, I might not find Satoshi there in the morning. So I kept talking to him until I passed out. I told him about what happened while he was missing. I told him that I realized how much I loved him after he went away. I'd searched for him, looking into various different things. I'd gathered underground information through Kasai and bargained for police information with Oishi, but I couldn't find any leads. A long time passed, but I kept thinking about him. Etc., etc. I told him all the small details from my daily life. The places I wanted to go with him, the things I wanted to do with him, the food I wanted to share with him, and I told him a lot of things. I was sitting up at first, but I got tired, so I lay down. I got tired of moving my mouth too, so I started talking to him in my mind. It was the happiest night I'd ever had. Oh boy. When I woke up, I didn't find Satoshi by my side. I knew it somehow. I was afraid of it. That's why I didn't want to go to sleep. But at least I got to see him for one night. Just when I resigned myself to that, I felt Satoshi's presence again. It wasn't a dream at all. I thank God. And so I began my strange life with Satoshi. As promised, Satoshi was always by my side. He couldn't laugh, mumble, or stroke my head, but he was always with me. Always right by my side. He disappeared sometimes, but he'd come back when I looked for him. It seemed that all I could hear was his footsteps. That's just the way he was, or that's just the way it was. It was a bit sad, but I was still satisfied. His presence was really faint, so it was hard to sense him in a crowd. But he never left me. If he were tangible, I'd be taking his hand all the time so that he wouldn't be lost. In contrast, I could feel him very strongly in a quiet environment. Of course, I couldn't tell what his expressions were, because he was just a presence. But after I got used to it, I could tell what he was thinking. At first, I could only tell if he was laughing or not. Eventually, I started to feel his emotions more strongly. I could communicate with him normally. I was usually alone with him though. I didn't want to go to school or hang out with my friends anymore, but Satoshi got upset about that. He kept mumbling unhappily. Now that I knew he'd always be with me, I shouldn't just stay home all the time. I was sticking to my time alone with him, however, because I was scared that he might suddenly disappear again, and I wanted to make the most of the time I was sharing with him right now. I must have been worrying too excessively. Satoshi will always be by my side. Yeah, that was his promise. He never breaks his promises. I was fine because he was there. Of course, I couldn't tell anybody about him, not even Sis. I could try to explain it to them, but they'd never understand. But I was certain that he was with me. So, I'd be alright. I'd never get fed up with life with him. He's really cute, you know? We always walk together. But when I stop, he always walks one extra step. That's so adorable, I love it. Notebook page 159. I think I think Shion might be losing it. I think she might be slowly turning schizophrenic.
今夜の綿流しのお祭りは
行って適当に遊ぶつもりです。お姉とその愉快な仲間たちでもからかうかな。
I wanted to go to the festival with Satoshi. I knew he liked to see me having fun with everybody. He might get jealous if I play with Kei-chan, but Satoshi isn't very sensitive in that way. Satoshi loved to see me and my friends have fun, so I should have a lot of fun for his sake. Then I talk about the date with him later. So, I'm trying to remember back to chapter 2. How to word it. So, at least if we go through this timeline, Keiichi met Shion, thinking she was Mion, behind the alley at some point in the start of June. So at some point after he had already been in Hinamizawa for a little while, and he already knew of Mion and Shion. He already knew of Mion. Some time has passed since then, and we're currently... So that means that Shion probably still worked at Angel Mort. Keiichi probably found her, thinking she was Mion again. And they quote-unquote started going out, or hanging out after, her work. Because I'm trying to remember. It was like Mion being like, hey, I'm gonna drop your bento off later. And then it's Shion who does it. Or Shion stops by and gives Keiichi food to try to like mess with her sister. I'm a little confused as to like when this is and what, like how much like Keiichi and her have interacted. It could be that Shion is pushing aside her thoughts to spend time with Keiichi, or maybe she thinks that while she spends time with Keiichi, she's instead spending time with Satoshi. I'm not sure. I'm a little confused, but I mean, it might get, you know,
何
talked
で
about.
ひなみ沢に行きますか？車で行くならお送りしますよ。
スクーターで行くからいいや。
それはいけません。帰りに本家に寄られて親類の宴会に加わられるんでしょ？居眠り運転などさせられません。
He won't let me drive, but he's kind enough to let me drink.
じゃ、お世話になりますかね。
わかりました。では夕方に出発しましょう。そのくらいの頃にお迎えに参ります。
After Kasai left, I sensed that Satoshi was excited about going to the festival.
綿流しか。サトシくんがいなくなっちゃってから、もうすぐ1年になるんだね。
Satoshi seemed confused.
でしょ？
We laughed together. Like, just imagine Shion sitting in her room, turning to her right or to her left, and be like, huh, the festival's gonna be a lot of fun, isn't it? And then her just waiting for a response, and then just laughing, and continuing to talk to the air. Man, that's something.
はいよ、アミとおわん。
よし、やるぞ。金魚はみんな生きがいいね。実に美味しそう。この小さいのなんかそのままボリボリと生でいけちゃうよね。
Huh?
ミオンさんは何を言ってるんでございますの？みーちゃん、食べてたの？去年レナからもらったのも食べちゃったの？
違う。私そんなこと言ってない。
Sis shook her head hard. She turned all red.
いやでも今ミオンお前自分で言ったぞ。実に美味しそうだって。
確かに言いました。お姉って雑食ですから口に入れば何でも食べちゃうんです。
美味しいなら今度僕も試してみるのです。ダメだよリカちゃん、お腹壊しちゃうよ。
ちょっと待て。おいこら、お前いつの間にいるんだよ。シオン。
ケイちゃんにお姉にみんなこんばんは。あんたどこから湧いてきたのシオン。焼きそば屋さんの時からずっとです。お姉たちは騒がしいからすぐに見つけられました。もうあんたは関係ないでしょ。早くどっか行きえなさいよ。もうお姉もあまり私を邪険にしないでくださいね。ケイちゃん、私が一緒でもいいですよね。
I took Kei-chan's arm and held it between my breasts. Puff, puff. Oh boy. We're gonna have a ball. I guess we're just skipping ahead past the games they played. Yeah. I went around the booths with Sis and her friends. I joked around and laughed out loud. I teased Kei-chan and Sis too. Kei-chan was at the center of the group, so if I did something to him, it naturally involved everybody else. It looked like Satoshi was having a hard time finding his own spot in the crowd. When I glanced at him in a quiet moment, he smiled and told me to have fun without worrying about him. If he were tangible, I'd pull his arm to join the crowd. It made me sad that I couldn't do that. Shion is fucking insane by this point. I bumped into somebody's shoulder. It was obviously my fault, so I apologized right away. As it turned out, it was somebody I knew.
あら、
楽しんでるみたいね。こんばんは、しおんちゃん。月の綺麗な晩ね。
あれ、すごいお久しぶりですね、高野さん。それから。
そうだね。挨拶をするのはこれが初めてだね。僕は富武。みおんちゃんの双子の妹さんだって話は聞いてるよ。
よろしくです、富武さん。凄腕のカメラマンとのお噂だとか。ぜひ今度私も映してくださいね。
デビューを夢見て投稿を繰り返す素人だけどね。
そんなことないわよ。二郎さんは上手、いろいろとね。
Many things.
いやいや、まだまだ勉強が足りないよ。才能に恵まれない分を努力で補わないとね。
They must have been in a relationship.
高野さんと富武さん、仲がよろしいようで。私はお邪魔ですかね。
あらあら、ご検察痛み入るけど、お気遣いは結構よ。それに高野なんて、なんだか他人行儀みたいな呼び方ね。昔みたいに、みよって呼んでくれていいのに。
やっぱり目上の人にファーストネーム呼びつけはちょっと気になるものでして。まあ気にしないでください。
I smiled bashfully, and Takano-san smiled back elegantly.
あれから図書館には来ないのね。研究の同志としてもっともっといろいろお話ししたかったのに。
まあ気が向いたらそのうちってことで。
You think they would have exchanged like phone numbers or something?
研究の同志ってまさかしおんちゃんも興味があるのかい？この村の昔話とかに。
Tomitake raised his eyebrows. As far as I knew, Takano's hobby wasn't exactly normal. On the surface, her research dealt with the cultural history of ancient Hinamizawa, but its main focus was the Watanagashi festival from ancient times, the cannibal banquet in which they captured and gutted a living sacrifice. Her research covered various stories surrounding that, and other legends of cruelty. It was nothing if not gory. That was where her main interest lay, so I didn't feel comfortable being called a fellow researcher, to be honest, but objectively speaking, her research notes were fun to read. It was then that I heard the loud booms of the taiko drums. The main event of the Watanagashi festival, the dedication dance, was about to start. According to Takano's hypothesis, the part of the dance where the shrine maiden tears open a futon represents gutting of a living victim.
いよいよ始まりますね。そろそろ私も行くかな。高野さんたちも見に行くんですよね。リカちゃまの儀式。
Well, actually, Shion, what if you help us in a B&E real quick? You know, breaking and entering? Tomitake looked bewildered. Did that mean he wasn't coming? Takano giggled, then whispered in my ear.
実はね、これから最後殿の中に入ってみようと思うの。
え？
She made it sound like she was going to do something fun, but it wouldn't be amusing to anyone who knew what the ritual storehouse was. The ritual storehouse, or the storehouse for ritual implements, is sort of a treasure house belonging to the Furude Shrine. I heard that Oyashiro-sama's sacred treasures were stored in there. Only people from the Furude family and selected members of the other three families are allowed to enter. They believe that if other people enter, the place would be desecrated. Everybody in Hinamizawa must have been curious about what was in there when we were kids. But the storehouse was always tightly locked. You couldn't just peek into it either. Kids would get chided if they played around it, so they learned to stay away. I didn't like being around it myself since I was familiar with it. I didn't like being around it myself since I was familiar with all that. Even though I didn't believe in curses, I still didn't want to be near it. Nothing good can come from breaking the rules. Were they still going to enter the ritual storehouse despite all of that?
でも確かものすごい厳重な鍵がかかってたと思いましたよ。
去年まではね。前の缶抜きじゃ重すぎて大変だとリカちゃんが言ったらしいの。それで今年から ものすごく安っぽい南京錠に変わったの。知ってた？
いえ、知りません。でも安っぽいと言ったって錠前がかかってます。
二郎さんね、とても器用なの。
ピッキングですか？
綿流しの儀式が始まれば全員が儀式に集まるでしょ。西宮殿の周りには人影は全くなくなる。今夜が一番の資格なの。東大元暮らしとでも言うのかしらね。
According to her hypothesis, the ancient tools used for human dissection and torture would be found in the ritual storehouse.
よかったら後でこっそりいらっしゃいな。二度とないチャンスよ。じゃあよかったら後でね。
高野さん、何の内緒話だい？
女同士の内緒話よ。
Just girl talk. We're gonna break in and we're gonna just do some breaking and entering. No
行
big
き
deal.
ましょう。暗くて人気のないところへ合いびきに。
ん
Takano walked against the flow of the crowd alongside Tomitage. The ritual storehouse, huh? It was supposedly fit with torture tools. Considering what they had in the underground torture room at the Sonosuke house, that's quite possible. Satoshi fell victim to the curse in the 4th year. His aunt's death was the sign of Oyashiro-sama's curse. Satoshi was the sacrifice to pacify Oyashiro-sama's anger. So, just real quick, because now that I think about it, we're in chapter 9. The Watanagashi festival normally happens around chapter 6 or 7. So we're 3 chapters ahead, 2 to 3 chapters ahead. Or late than normal, I mean. Something is gonna happen, obviously. Are we going to see what happens after the victim is chosen this time? I guess we'll see. That was what Takano said last year. It was just her hypothesis. At present, I wanted to deny her hypothesis because I wanted to believe that Satoshi was still alive. If her hypothesis was correct, either some religious fanatic or somebody from the 3 families must be imitating the curse in order to revive the ancient custom of Onigafchi. That would mean that it was them who killed Satoshi. So what if the ritual storehouse was filled with garbage instead of torture implements? Maybe it was filled with broken palanquins or freshly painted signboards for the festival. What then? It wasn't really hard for me to believe that it was filled with the chemical smell of paint. Maybe I'll get to deny the hypothesis that Satoshi was sacrificed by seeing the inside of the ritual storehouse myself. Whatever was in there, it didn't mean that Satoshi would come back.
サトシ君、どうしよう。
Since most people went to see Rika's performance, the festival grounds were deadly quiet. Even so, I couldn't sense Satoshi. Did he go somewhere? Or was I not paying enough attention? Or maybe he wasn't feeling any emotions in particular. After thinking for a while, I decided to go in with him. It had been almost a year since Satoshi's disappearance. I'd been avoiding the truth because I was afraid he might be dead. But now I had a chance. I had a chance to see the inside of the ritual storehouse. I felt as though something divine had arranged that coincidence. On my way to the storehouse, I noticed Keiichi. He was jumping up and down, trying to see Rika's dedication dance over people's shoulders. If I took him along, we could split the guilt. Oyashiro-sama might put a curse on me for entering his divine storehouse. I wanted a partner in crime. That's so fucked up. Because remember, she mentioned how... make sure I got this right. Where is it? Only people from the Furuta family and selected members of the other 2-3 families are allowed to enter. So only select members from the Sonozakis and the Hojos can enter that place. So yeah, I guess she could still be cursed. Anyway, we know what happens after this. But she wants Keiichi to still like taking the blame. That's so fucked up. Maybe Mion's love should disappear this year.
何考えてんだ私。
That must have been the ogre inside me. I shook the thought out of my head.
どうしたんだよシオン。それより奉納演舞がよく見えるとこってまだ遠いのか？
奉納演舞がよく見えるなんて誰が言いました？
We made it to the storehouse. Keiichi was baffled by the whole situation. Our timing had been perfect. I could see Tomitake picking the lock. Yeah, so we know what happens here. Even though Keiichi must have been curious, he insisted that we shouldn't go in. But I talked him into it anyway. He was quick to change his mind when Tomitake joined in. But all three go in. It was completely dark inside, so Takano lit a battery-powered lantern, and, sorry, a small entry space appeared before
真っ
us.
暗だね。みんな転ばないように気をつけるんだよ。
Wait,
ご心配ありがとう。じゃあ門番をよろしくね。
I was like, is he coming in? No, he's
ここ
gonna
閉
keep
めるわ
watch.
よ。
Takano-san closed the door with a smile, as if leaving Tomitake out on purpose.
やれやれ。じゃあみんなゆっくり楽しんでおいで。
Have fun. As soon as the heavy door was closed, we were surrounded by quiet darkness. All we could rely on was Takano-san's lantern.
大丈夫よ。予備電池も入ってるアウトドア仕様なんだから、消えたりなんかしないわよ。
Takano teased Keiichi a little. Keiichi, in turn, looked a little pale. He seemed to be able to recognize the sanctity of the building even though he wasn't from Hinamizawa.
さあ入りましょう。よ
Oh
い
boy.
しょ。
After Takano opened the heavy inner door, a dusty, foul smell flowed out. It was like the smell of a pantry that hadn't been opened in years and the smell of a fish market mixed together. I didn't know exactly how to describe it, but it was a bad smell. From listening to the echo of her footsteps, I could tell that this room was much bigger than the one we were just in. Yeah, the antechamber. When Takano raised her lantern, I could clearly see just how big it was. The far side of the wall, there was a statue of some kind of god staring down at us intruders. The way it was lit by the lantern gave it a powerful appearance, and it scared me.
あれがひなみ沢の守り神。お社様よ。
Now, I'm sure I've shown this background off before, but just once again as a quick refresher, that's the classic version, and then here's the console background. So, like, the rooms look very different. They look very, very, very different in both versions. But either way. I looked up at the statue which was holding its religious ornaments. If Satoshi's disappearance really was a curse, I couldn't forgive this god. I found myself irritated by the way the statue looked down at me. Damn you, Yashiro. If you really made Satoshi disappear, I'll never forgive you. Never. Keiichi didn't seem to understand the significance of the storehouse. He looked bored. Takano noticed that and took out her scrapbook to show him the brutal history of ancient Hinamizawa. I'd heard the story already, so I decided to walk around by myself. Since I knew the significance of all these tools, I felt a little nauseated. Though they certainly wouldn't jump out to me, I still found them intimidating. They looked as if they were craving for flesh blood after not having been used in hundreds of years. All the tools looked similar to the ones I saw in the underground torture room at the Izonozaki main house. If those tools were the progenies of torture implements, these would be their ancestors. All the implements here looked old. I doubted they could really be used. They weren't kept maintained like the ones at the Izonozaki house. So did that mean that they shouldn't scare me? No, on the contrary. They told me that cruel rituals were indeed performed at this village at one point. Now that I found scary. What Takano told me was the truth. When I stopped, Satoshi also stopped behind me, one step later. I felt no emotional change in Satoshi. I couldn't tell if he was feeling something or not. I knew he was there, but I had no idea how he was feeling. I felt scared of him for the first time. If he could answer me, I'd want to ask him, who took you away?
ね、サトシ君。聞いてる？
I couldn't tell if he heard me or not. He left, as if he didn't hear anything. I could tell that he'd been sulky ever since we got here. I suddenly felt so lonely. I suddenly felt lonely, so I looked for him while walking around. I realized then that there was an altar in front of the statue. He might be there. It was a clean altar. An altar ornamented with religious artifacts. It was kept well maintained. I saw no dust. That would mean, well, the flowers in the vase weren't wilting. I saw a pretty handkerchief under the vase, or vase. It looked out of place amongst everything else. I was fairly certain it was the Rika this handkerchief. That would mean that the storehouse is maintained daily. It wasn't a forgotten ruin buried in dust. So the brutality that dwelled in this ritual storehouse is still alive and well in Hinamizawa. That's right. Something as ambiguous as Oyashiro-sama's curse is nothing more than a simple delusion of the villagers. As Takano said, everything that happens in this world was done by humans. I almost said, as Takano-san said, do you believe in Santa Claus? I'd accuse Oyashiro-sama of demoning away Satoshi, but Oyashiro is just a statue made of bronze or wood. It's nothing but an icon. There are, however, human beings who would try to make that icon seem real. The series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa is a result of human action. It shouldn't be called Oyashiro-sama's curse. If Satoshi was the fourth year's victim, then he was victimized by a human being who was just acting the part of a curse. The person who demoned away Satoshi was not to be very far from me. The truth behind Satoshi's disappearance was not so far from my grasp. I was startled by the sound. It sounded like somebody had dropped something. I looked over at Takano and Keiichi. Takano was still lecturing him. Did she drop her scrapbook or something? The sound came from right behind me. Not from them. I'd never heard Satoshi do that. It sounded like somebody was stomping on the floor in frustration. What is it? The sound continued, ignoring my question. Though I heard it right nearby, it sounded as though a child was hopping on a wooden floor somewhere distant.
どうしたのサトシ君何か怒ってるの
I couldn't read his expressions. I thought he was mad, but I didn't sense any emotion from him at all. Was he mad that I touched the altar? Maybe you weren't supposed to do that. It's not that I've been able to communicate with Satoshi in a concrete way. I just talked to him. I was never expecting him to react like that. I didn't sense a willingness to communicate from this creepy sound. Then a chill ran up my spine. I felt as if all my pores were opening. I've been thinking that it was Satoshi stomping on the floor. Hey, you're Satoshi, aren't you? The sound stopped when I asked that. It wasn't a yes or a no, just silence. Satoshi wouldn't scare me like that. I realized suddenly that the sound hadn't come from Satoshi. A cold shiver shot through my feet and sprung a step backward. The sound had come from right there. Even though I jumped back, it was still just a few meters away. Satoshi would sometimes let me hear his footsteps when I walked. But if that wasn't Satoshi, then there was no guarantee I'd hear its footsteps. So, that invisible being could already be right in front of my eyes. And I just couldn't see it. I forgot everything and ran, straining my ears as much as possible for any sound, listening for any footsteps pursuing me. I ran right into Keiichi and clung to him, timidly turning back to look. The dimly lit area before the altar was quiet, like nothing was happening. But seeing that chilling dark stillness, realizing I was just in that space, made me even more frightened now.
どうしたよシオン。ひょっとして怖くなった？
Keiichi made fun of me. Even though he looked horrified just a little while ago, he now looked satisfied to see me scared too.
お化け屋敷で女の子がしがみついてくるのはデフォじゃないですか。まんざらでもないくせに。ほらほら、行きましょう。高野さんに置いてかれます。
I pretended to be fine, but I wasn't sure if I was able to hide my fear entirely. The footsteps were chasing me. They were outside the illumination of the lantern, as if they couldn't go into the light. The presence never left us, however. It followed us like a fourth member of the party. Sometimes it made a stomping sound, as if wanting some recognition, but neither Takano nor Keiichi seemed to notice it. It was possible for Takano to be ignoring it, but Keiichi would never ignore it. If he could hear it, he would have said something. So, just like with Satoshi, only I could hear it. What was this thing that was making me so scared? Was it Satoshi in a bad mood? Or was it possible that the presence I believed to be Satoshi might not have been him at all? What are you upset about, Satoshi? Tell me if I did something wrong, I'll apologize. If you aren't Satoshi, then where did he go? When did you take his place?
Shion, 大丈夫か？
はい。全然平気ですよ。それよりケイちゃんこそ顔面蒼白でかなりヤバげかと。
なら、あまり俺の服を引っ張りすぎないでくれると嬉しいんだけどな。
あ、こりゃ失礼です。
He looks so fucking smug here. You look a little scared, Keiichi. I'd appreciate it if you weren't tearing my shirt off right now, with how scared you are.
あらあら、私はお邪魔かしら
I decided to engage in the conversation to help myself ignore the sound from behind. I didn't hear the sound as much, and it became a bit more distant. Yeah, I shouldn't pay attention to it. It wouldn't bother me if I didn't hear it. I should just ignore the noise.
で、高野さんはその風習が実は現代にも残っているんじゃないかと思って研究をしてるんです。そうでしたよね。
これ、本当に内緒なんだからね。
Actually, give me one sec. Should be able to do this. Let's crank this up a little bit more, just like with the music.
シオンちゃんは理解のある人だから話したけど、他の村人には聞かれたくないの。下手をしたら罰当たり者ってことで袋叩きにされかねないんだから。
She smiled at me like a witch.
前原くんも内緒にしてね。知られたら私、お社様のたたりに会うか、生贄にされちゃうかするかもしれない。たたりなら、今年はどんな死に方をさせられちゃうのかしら。生贄なら、鬼ヶ淵の沼に生きたまま沈められちゃうのかしら。そういえば、今夜よね。お社様のたたりがある夜は。
It certainly is. I'm trying to see if maybe there's something different in the background, but I'm not noticing anything new. If the curse strikes for a fifth time, it'll happen tonight. Takano pulled out an old scrapbook from her paper bag and started turning the pages. She opened it to the page with that one article. It was the article about the brutal murder of the Watanagashi victim. It happened in the Meiji
これ
era.
は実際にあったお話よ。明治の終わり頃にね。鬼ヶ淵村で身元不明の惨殺死体が発見されたんですって。かくも無残かつ残虐非道を。
Hey. You guys seriously don't hear that? It's freaking loud. How can you not hear it? Just for the sake of it? Let's crank it up to max. Oh, it's freaking noisy. Cut it out already. And the next moment, we all heard a squeaking noise. We turned around in surprise. It was just Tomitake opening the door.
驚かせちゃったかな？
あら、二郎さんも見たくて我慢できなくなったかしら。ここ、素敵な拷問道具の宝庫よ。
僕は遠慮させてもらうよ。生来ね、こういうのは苦手なんだ。
Takano laughed as if making fun of Tomitake for being such a scaredy cat.
それより、演舞とセレモニーが終わって、みんな沢の方に降りていったよ。あと何分もしないうちにお祭りは終わっちゃう。
Time was up. I'd never expected that Tomitake would save me from this nightmare. His face suddenly looked heroic.
ケイチ君も出るかい？
もう十分に見ましたので。シオン、もういいだろ。出ようぜ。綺麗な空気が吸いたいよ。
同感です。出ましょう。
Thump, 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 thump. I went into the entry room and turned around. Takano was taking pictures in a mad rush, though our time was up. I didn't hear that sound anymore. I didn't feel that presence. I didn't feel Satoshi either. But somehow I wasn't too sad about that. Even if he followed me out here, I wouldn't be able to tell if it was really him or somebody else. Crazy da yo. What that was a very interesting chapter, because again, this is what happened in around chapter 6 or 7 in or subchapter 6 or 7 in chapter 2, where we as Keiichi went into that. The thing is, Shion asked us, "Hey, did you hear that thumping?" And they were like, "Thumping? What thumping?" Because they hadn't like heard any of it before. So Shion was confused. This time though, she didn't mention it, which is surprising. Or maybe she did and they skipped over the fact, or they mentioned something like, oh, they didn't really notice it. Or, you know, they weren't, or maybe she realized like if, you know, the sound was so loud, if they would have heard it, they would have brought it up or something. But it was interesting seeing that entire scene through her perspective. Because remember, when we were when we were Keiichi in chapter 2, we went through that scene, and we kind of saw everything happening, right? Through his eyes. And we were able to see, like, or hear the story be told without being, you know, interrupted. The story of the brutal murder that had happened in Onigashiki village years ago. This time, however, we were seeing that exact same scene, but hearing all the thumping that Shion kept hearing, which was really, really, really interesting. Anyway, get a few tips. 172, 73, and 179. That underground torture room is officially called the Underground Ritual Storehouse. I don't believe we've seen this image either, or maybe we did, but just in case, we'll show it off for the background. And then the console version of it. Yeah, I don't think we had seen this, this BG before. Creepy. So do torture room and ritual storehouse mean the same thing? Actually, well, let's find out. If I do this, and then we do this. Doesn't seem like it. According to Takano-san's theory, bloody rituals including the Watanagashi have been passed down among the three families even after the Meiji era. The rituals are always ready to be performed. Their form of worship always revolved around torture, so Hinamizawa's history involved a great deal of human slaughter. Takano's theory is correct. The underground storehouse at the Sonosuke household looked well maintained. Takano-san is right about that too. Since the Sonosuke family and the Furuta family both have ritual storehouses, the Kimiyoshi family must have one too. After all, these ancient and brutal customs are still handed down throughout the generations. I should remain armed with knowledge that the occult events are still secretly being performed in this cursed village. Interesting. Kimiyoshi was the mayor, I believe. But they didn't mention anything about the Hojo household. Anyway, page 173. The sanctity of the ritual storehouse is one of the most prominent elements of worship. In the worship of Oyashiro-sama. Of course, I knew that since I'm originally from Hinamizawa, but violating that sanctity is actually a more serious problem than I thought. Takano's research shows that the history of the ritual storehouse goes way back. The ritual implements within have long been viewed as inviolable objects, which is why it's strictly forbidden to enter. Takano-san's theory says that the Watanagashi was once a public execution, performed to stabilize the reign of the three families rather than a purely religious ritual. Right. If so, the ritual should hardly be called sacred. Under those circumstances, the implements should have been despised as symbols of hatred and fear. When instruments of fear are too visible, it only creates a reign of terror. But keep them as hidden as possible and they gain divinity. Many said that they would become tainted if the laymen touched them. The only reason for that was to preserve their false prestige through secrecy, since they would lose their sanctity if revealed before the common folk. In other words, the true identity of the ritual storehouse's sacredness was fear. That was the true emotion ruling over this village. I think in a way, one of the reasons, because what they're saying is true. I talked about this during, the earlier chapters, right? We talked about how throughout history, I won't repeat this too much, but I'll just quickly summarize it. How throughout history, humans were usually unified through some banner, right? Through some means, right? And throughout most history, it was religion. Religion was something that was used to keep everyone kind of together and to unite everyone against the common enemy. And that's something that's still being observed today, if you look at certain sects of the world, let's say. And I'll leave it at that. Here, they're using fear to control the masses. We know that the older generations of the village fear and revere Oyashiro-sama, right? All the grandparents are scared of him. But all the youngins, right? They don't care. They don't really care about the Watanagashi festival. Most people didn't care. Most people were kind of moving on to the modern world, which in a way results in that unity slipping away. That unity, not the unity that the village feels for each other, because they definitely have that. The unity of being fearful of Oyashiro-sama. Because that's what kind of resulted in the power of the three families remaining steady. You would have everyone united under the, just think about it through modern terms. Imagine if everyone went to the same church, and then everyone was also scared of the mayor of the town, right? It'd be those two things. In this case, it's kind of something similar, where you have the main households trying to instill fear on others through the means of Oyashiro-sama. So, the people in the village kind of just were going about their daily lives as time would go on. The current generation of adults and children aren't really fearful of things, if that makes sense. They know, that the town worships Oyashiro-sama. They know that the town has, these traditions. And they know that the three families run things. But maybe the Sonosuke family was these guys are getting a little too comfortable. Let's remind them what this village is all about. So what did they do? The first murder happened. Once that happened, some more people kind of started showing up to the Watanagashi. And the rumor that started spreading around once it happened after the second year was that those that would not attend the Watanagashi would be punished. Because the Hojos didn't go the first year, they were punished the second year. And so on, and so on, and so on. So, people are being controlled through fear, obviously. Where you have the fear of religion being implemented, while also keeping the strong reign of the families intact over the village. In this case, mainly the Sonosuke family. the Sonozuki family has already taken out the Hojos and the Furude, because all that's left is Satoko and Rika. So by this point, they can kind of just move up. They can move on and swoop in all the power that's remaining. They can still instill fear in people through, you know, extortion and the like if they need to. But they want to keep everyone together through the or under the banner of Oyashiro-sama. At least that's my current guess as to why these murders are happening if they're being performed by a person. So, let's look at the final tip here, which is 179, notebook page 179. The reason why Takano and Tomitake were cursed is because they broke into the ritual storehouse. I don't know how the villagers found out about it. Maybe somebody was watching. Maybe there was an anti-theft alarm. Either way, our intrusions must have been reported to the highest level of the curse system. That's because, considering the distance between the village and the site where Takano-san's body was found, she must have been killed right after we came out of the ritual storehouse. Oh boy. It was done very quickly. It's possible that a special assassination team exists for this purpose, or that the plan had been set up a long time ago. They might have been secret agents of the Sonozuki family, but the latter sounds more valid. But if so, who would have been the victim if nobody broke into the ritual storehouse? Right. Because she dies that night. Like, Takano and Tomitake die. The thing is, Takano is burned alive, presumably. And the only way we're able to find out it's her is because they ran the dental records, or her dental records, and cross-referenced them with, like, a dentist in her area or some shit. And that's how they found out it was her. Tomitake clawed at his throat and killed himself that way. Which is insane, right? My guess is, not only did they break into the storehouse, but they also took pictures, which is, I mean, breaking in is already sacrilegious, but breaking in and also taking pictures of what's inside is probably also very, 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 very bad. So to show them the disrespect that they caused, they tortured them for a few hours and then dumped their bodies, which is crazy because remember, Takano was found in like another prefecture, so like they worked really fast. However, if she died this quickly, in this timeline that we're exploring right now, does Keiichi never meet her after killing Satoko's uncle? Because Satoko's uncle would have died tonight. Satoko's uncle would have come back, would have been abusing Satoko, and then he would have died tonight. His body would have been buried tonight. Instead of Keiichi spending time with Shion and everybody else going into the storehouse, he would have been busy killing Satoko's uncle. So what the fuck is going on then? Anyway, let's move on to chapter 10. My relatives gathered at the Sonozuki house after the festival to have a little party. Oh, this is the first time we're seeing, like, a hallway, I think, inside of this home. I mingled with my uncles and had fun. But here we have, like, the inside of, like, a mansion. Oh, this reminds me a lot of Fatal Frame. Oh, yeah. Oh. Like, just a hallway with screen doors everywhere. I'm expecting, you know, a ghost to come out of one of these walls, and then we have to take a picture of it and fight it. Anyway, I was trying to get rid of my eerie memories from the ritual storehouse. Mion was acting as a successor, so I tried to stay away from her. I'm sure she would feel weird if I talked to her in a formal way. In consideration of the hag's old age, we ended the party at around 11 p.m. We all helped to clean up, with the women washing the dishes in the kitchen, and the men folding the tables and putting them away in the storeroom. It took only about 30 minutes and everybody left one after another. By then, Mion was no longer acting as the Sonozuki successor and was back to being her normal self. Maybe I drank too much. I was lying on the tatami floor. Kasai asked me if I could get in the car, so I told him I'd barf if I got in now.
おねえ、今日泊まってってもいい？ここで寝ちゃいたい。バッチャに見つかると怒られるよ。 で、それよりシオン、明日は学校じゃないの？明日は開校記念日だからいいの。あんたの学校、開校記念日って年に何回あるわけ？
Also, don't we give Keiichi a ride, or didn't Shion give Keiichi a ride back?
まあ、いっか。じゃあ、葛西さん。シオンは今夜はうちで預かります。
わかりました。ではよろしくお願いいたします。
ほら、シオン起きて。ここで寝てるとバッチャに怒られるって。ほら、肩を貸すから奥に行こう。私の布団貸してあげるから。ありりー、おねー。
My alter ego told me that I'm in an ogre's stomach. I wouldn't have woken up if I hadn't heard that voice, but when I stop, he always walks one extra step. I might have not woken up at all. Page 165. I didn't remember much after that. I was probably brought to Mion's room and immediately crawled into the futon. After a while, Mion got her futon ready next to me, turned the lights off, and went to sleep. At least that's what I thought. I got up and turned the lights on. Mion's futon was empty. The futon felt cold. Mion must have left it a while ago. Did she go to the bathroom? No, the closest bathroom was right there down the hallway. The light in the bathroom was off. Where did she go? The ticking of the clock was loud and annoying in the silence. The hands pointed to a little before 3 a.m. I was left alone all of a sudden in this late night. I felt the eeriness of the ritual storehouse coming back to me, despite drinking it away with alcohol earlier. I tried to sense my surroundings. In this house, there shouldn't be an eerie atmosphere, strange noises, or footsteps. I stepped out into the freezing cold hallway to look for Mion. When I immediately noticed the light coming from one of the nearby rooms. That room belonged to the hag. The hag went to sleep early and woke up early. She was very strict about her bedtime, so it was strange to see her light on in the middle of the night. I could hear voices too. Those voices belonged to the hag and Mion. I creeped up to the room and listened to their conversation. Since it was the middle of the night, I could hear their words very clearly.
しゃあもねえやんな。あんの赤いのもちょい出張りすぎやったんや。
まあね、お社様のお怒りに触れたんだから仕方ないしね。
Mion's voice sounded as cold as the one I'd heard down in the torture room. I held my breath.
警察は調べとっちゅうとろんが、すっとろん間違いなあかんね。
Was checking just to see if they maybe gave her
多分
her
ね、
icon.
高野さんだろうね。
My heart almost stopped. Oyashiro got angry. The police are investigating. It's probably Takano. And what day was it today? Those words told me that something was happening. My teeth started to chatter. I desperately tried to stop them. I felt like my body was swelling up suddenly. I could no longer hear as well. Calm down. Breathe. Listen more carefully. According to Mion and the hag's conversation, another incident definitely took place. The victims were Takano and Tomitake. From what I could tell, both Mion and the hag thought it made sense that whatever it was happened to them. No. I need to think more calmly. They did say they deserved it for making Oyashiro-sama angry. Did they say Takano and Tomitake made Oyashiro-sama angry? How did they make him angry? They knew. My body started to shake. They knew we snuck into the ritual storehouse. Then, would that mean Keiichi and I were also subject to Oyashiro-sama's curse? Suddenly, a phone rang. The phone was by the front door. The front door was opposite to the hag's room, further down the hall. The ringing echoed throughout the long hallway. It sounded so eerie. almost like it was coming from hell. That was when I felt someone behind me. Of course, there was nobody there when I turned around, but there was someone there a moment ago. I didn't know if it was Satoshi. I didn't sense any emotion, so I couldn't tell. I also didn't know how long it had been there. It was as if somebody was watching me listen in on their conversation. That was the feeling I got. It couldn't be Satoshi. Satoshi would never be that intimidating or scary. My mind turned all red, like it was suffused with blood.
みーちゃんにはない？ひたひたとずっと足音がついてきて、夜は枕元にまで立たれて見下ろされる経験。
I remembered what Rena had said on that rainy day.
そうならばみーちゃんは大丈夫。お社様には怒られない。
If Oyashiro wasn't angry, nobody would follow me. So what did this mean? Ever since we snuck into the shrine storage, something has been following me. What is it? Calm down, calm down. That's right. Rena wasn't talking about me. She was talking about Satoshi. That's what happened to Satoshi.
サトシ君が体験していることは、すべてお社様のたたりの前触れなの。
That's right. That's why he encountered the curse of Oyashiro.
誰かが遠くからじっと伺っている。誰かがずっとつけてくる。
A creepy feeling crawled up and spread across my
誰か
back.
がいつも自分のすぐ後ろから見ている。やがて足音は常に自分とずれて一つ余計に聞こえるようになるの。
I swallowed loudly. It was almost as though Rena was predicting what would happen to me. Had Rena been talking about Satoshi back then? Or had she actually been talking about me?
やがて後ろのそれは自分の家の中にまでついてくるようになる。そしてお布団に入って明かりを消してもずっと枕元から見下ろしてるの。ただただ黙ってじーっと。
I knew by now that there was no mistake. No matter how I looked at it, she had been talking about me. Yes, me. It had been about me. The curse of Oyashiro-sama. What is the curse of Oyashiro-sama? That was when I actually felt something for real. Somebody grabbed my collar. No voice came out. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was open and close my mouth as if something was stuck in my throat. It was Mion. She looked even colder than how she'd looked in the underground torture room. It only made sense. That she'd come out into the hallway to answer the phone. I tried to come up with an excuse. However, the way Mion looked at me was so cold. Even if I had really run into her by accident, I could tell by the look in her eyes that she wouldn't believe me. I felt cold sweat all over my body. I couldn't even move my fingers.
ごめん。
I apologized. I could have said something to get myself out of the situation, but the apology came out first. But Mion didn't appear to hear me. She walked to the front door, still holding my collar. The phone was still ringing. A normal person doesn't usually let a phone ring for so long at this time of night. The phone call itself didn't seem real to me. Mion picked up the phone.
ミオンです。そうですか。わかりました。そちらの対応はよろしくお願いします。それから一切の口封じをよろしくお願いします。ええ。では。
Mion put down the phone after a short conversation. What did she mean? Make sure nobody talks about this. Who called any... Wait? Mion put her forehead to mine and spoke to me.
聞いてた?
Oh boy. Which conversation was she asking me about? Well, she had to be talking about the one with the hag. If I said yes, what would happen to me?
何のことかわかんない。
Mion pulled my collar, pressed her nose on mine, and continued to speak.
聞こえた通りです。富武さんと高野さんがお社様のたたりに遭われました。本当にお気の毒なことです。
It was like I was talking to myself in a mirror. But what I was saying in the mirror was ever so cold.
おねお社様のたたりって何です？
富武さんは自らの手で喉をかきむしってお亡くなりになりました。高野さんは遠くの山奥でドラム缶に詰められて焼き殺されたそうで、実にお気の毒です。
Tomitake clawed at his own throat until he died? What? Takano was burned to death in an oil drum? What? What? I felt something furry crawl up my spine. I also felt like my stomach was turning upside down. I didn't feel any strength in my legs. If Mion let go of my collar, I'd probably collapse on the spot.
なんでそんな死に方したのかな。
わかりませんか、シオン。
I'm asking you because I don't know.
わかんないよ。
理由なんて一つしかないじゃないですか。
Please don't talk as if I already know the answer.
何の理由かな。
My heart was pounding. I felt that my next breath would be so bloody and hot that I'd choke on it.
そんなこともわかんないのですか。
It's because they made Oyashiro-sama angry. The first year, it was the manager of the dam construction site. Second year, it was traitors to the village. Third year, it was the pacifist. Fourth year, it was relatives of the traitors. I'd always thought the victims were people who had something to do with the dam conflict. Since I didn't do anything against the village during the dam conflict, I assumed I was safe. I should have known. I should have known everything would be the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I knew Oyashiro-sama's anger was the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I knew Oyashiro-sama would get angry if I snuck into the ritual storehouse, but since I wasn't held responsible in any way for the dam conflict, I never thought I would be the victim of a curse. Or of the curse. Did I ever think there would be an incident like in the 5th year? Did I ever think that I'd be the victim of that 5th year's incident? Tomitake snuck into the storehouse and he clawed at his own throat until he died. Takano was burned to death in an oil drum. It must be a lie, it couldn't be true. Even if it was forbidden, it was just space for storing some old torture implements. How could they be killed for just sneaking in there? Especially in such gruesome ways. But I thought about it again and realized that those people were absolutely capable of doing things like that. The main Sonosuke family was capable of it. The Sonosuke family had been pulling the strings behind the series of mysterious deaths. They could do it. The Sonosuke family even kidnapped the grandson of the Minister of Construction during the dam conflict. They could do it. The Sonosuke family made Satoshi disappear completely. They could do it. Mion leaned against me before falling onto the cold hallway floor. She collapsed rather violently. I usually didn't go to sleep with my stun gun, but since I was too drunk to get ready for bed, I still had it on me. I had my stun gun on me. I finally understood. I didn't know who killed him exactly, whose idea it was or who ordered it. I didn't even know who was actually involved. But Mion and the hag knew everything. Satoshi. Now I finally know. Now I know what I need to do. I will settle the score for you. I will avenge you. I won't be killed like you. I walked into the hag's room. She was sitting up to take some of her medicine. Her back was turned to me. Mion and I are twins. If I acted like her, the hag wouldn't notice the difference. I didn't think she ever suspected me. I put my stun gun to her neck and pulled the trigger. I heard an indescribable electrical sound and the hag's lights went out. She fell in a twisted position. I didn't know how long it would take a person to regain their freedom of movement after getting knocked out with a stun gun, so I had to restrain them before they woke back up. I was unbelievably calm. Oh. How long is this gonna take you to, like Mion, how long is this gonna take you to do all this? Would it be 1500 seconds? The key to the underground torture room was in the forbidden drawer that only the head of the family can access. Mion had told me about this once. I'd never looked for the drawer before, but I found it exactly where I thought it would be. The key was on a keychain with several of its sisters. Each key had a little plaque on it that said what it was used for. They were all in Mion's handwriting. She was an idiot for being so conscientious, but it sure helped me out. I put the keychain in my pocket and headed to the outdoor storeroom to find a cart. By the way, I'll let the story keep going, but just know that everything that's happened in Chapter 2 is clicking right now in my head. I found a large flashlight there as well. There was a strap on the flashlight so I could put it on my shoulder. That way, I'd have both hands free to carry Mion and the hag. I loaded Mion and then our grandmother onto the cart and carried them to the underground torture room. I was prepared to use the stun gun again if they woke up while I was working, but it was more powerful than I'd imagined, and the hag showed no signs of waking. This was a stun gun Kasai specially ordered for me when I told him I wanted a powerful one. I remembered him telling me that it was an illegally modified stun gun and that I should never use it just for fun. I used my flashlight to find the light switch. I found it easily and turned it on. All the lights went on in the basement. Although there was now illumination, it was very dim. I moved quickly so as to finish what I needed to do before they woke up. I decided to put Mion in a cell beyond the torture room. The lights in the torture room were so bright, it was like daylight. There was a door there. I was fairly certain the cells were on the other side of that door. The proper key was here. The keys made a tinkling sound. I felt cold air coming in through the gap in the door. There must be a huge opening on the other side. I opened the door and saw nothing but darkness. I felt along the wall to find a light switch. I turned the switch on and the light bulbs lit up, revealing a huge rocky cave. It didn't look like a natural cave, it looked more like an air raid shelter. If I recall, Shion, while she has been here, when she was brought over to this part of the household, she was blindfolded. And it wasn't until the blindfolds were taken off that she could see what was going on. There were several hollow openings with bars across them. Those were the cells. I walked up to the closest cell and checked to see if it was strong enough to confine her. I pushed and pulled on the bars. I rammed against them with all my weight and decided they were perfectly sturdy. This was secure enough to be called a cell. I opened the lock and carried Mion in. I wasn't particularly strong, just average. I never thought I was strong enough to carry a whole person, but now I didn't need to pretend to be weak. I could easily lift and drag their bodies. I put Mion in the cell. She seemed to moan a little. I didn't need to check to make sure. The effect of my stun gun was wearing off. I closed the bars and turned the key to the lock. Then I ran to the hag, who must have been starting to wake up too. Fortunately, there were no signs of her regaining consciousness. Maybe the difference in age had something to do with it. I looked for a table to restrain her on. I found a wheelchair with restraints for the hands and feet. I put the hag in it. Of course, she didn't resist, but her dead weight made it seem like she was a huge French doll, but one made of flesh. I put her hands on the armrests and restrained them at the wrists with the metal rings and hinges. I did the same with her feet. This must have been a wheelchair specially remodeled to restrain a person. Other than the restraints, it was a regular wheelchair. I waited for the hag to wake up. I had so many things I wanted to ask her. I didn't think she'd answer honestly, but I had plenty of tools to make her talk. I was in no rush. When the hag had a concern, relatives took care of the problem. That was how it worked in the Sonozaki family. She was the leader of the family, so all the information they gathered would make its way to her. She must know everything that happened in Hinamizawa, including the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I heard a noise from the cell. Mion must have woken up before the hag did. Speaking of the hag, she didn't seem like she was about to wake up anytime soon. but she was restrained even if she did, so I had no need to fear. I left the hag there and headed for the cell.
シオン、これは何の真似ですか？
She talked like the successor, but she also sounded frightened. She obviously understood the situation she was in right
お
now.
はよう、ミオン。まさか自分が閉じ込められることになるとは思わなかった？園崎家当主代行として命じます。
Okay, so whenever they do refer to her as head, they mean Meiji. And Meiji is a specific title given to like a master of something. Usually someone that is has incredible knowledge or talent to do something. Like, say, I don't know, let's say like the head mechanic at like the main Nissan dealership would be called like a Meiji, you know, stuff like that. Like a blacksmith or, you know, a head architect would be called a Meiji.
ここを開けなさい。声色に一つ凄みが欠けますね。当主様はもっと傲慢な言い方をしなきゃね。もっともそういう言い方ができたとしても、今のあんたは滑稽なだけなんだけどさ。
There was nothing funny about it, but I wanted to intimidate Mion. My laughter echoed throughout the cave. It was an artificial and meaningless laughter. I heard it over and over as it echoed. It sounded as if I wasn't the only one laughing. I couldn't stand it, so I stopped. Silence filled the air. That silence almost hurt my ears, so I started to speak.
富武さんと高野さんが今年の犠牲になるとはね。思わなかった。高野さんのドラム缶に詰めて焼き殺したってのもなかなかやるね。ま、あの人はそういう死に方を自分で希望してたっぽいからね。結構満足してるかもよ。
And do remember, in Chapter 2, when we learned about the torture room, when we went in there with Keiichi and everyone else, when we played as Keiichi or saw things through Keiichi's mind, through his perspective, I mean, Takano had mentioned something along the lines of like, that the cages that were above them were used to torture people, and I believe she mentioned something about slowly burning them to death so that they could feel like the pain as long as possible, something like that. So I remember making like noticing the parallels between her death and what she talked about. Mion didn't say anything. She just stared at me to see how I'd proceed.
富武さんの自分で自分の喉を引き裂いたってのは何？凶器に駆り立てるような怪しいお薬でも注射したの？それともそういう死に方に見せるような拷問道具でもあるわけ？
Mion didn't reply. I was smiling boldly, but I became impatient and finally kicked the bars. It made a violent noise. Mion jumped as if she was kicked directly.
返事がないと退屈です。私を怒らせるとどんな得が？私が知るわけないでしょ。
I also just remembered in the final scene of Chapter 2, Shion knocked Keiichi out with a stun gun. Anyway, like I said, everything is clicking, right, in my mind. Mion finally replied. She was odious, but at the same time sounded pitiful.
ねえ、ミオン。次期当主様。ここまで来ちゃったんだから教えてく。
I had just too many things I wanted to ask her. I wanted to ask her about me, about the incident, about the curse, about Satoshi. I didn't even know where to start. Before I asked her about those, I asked her one other thing.
私に対して反抗的な態度をとっても何の得にもならないこと。理解して。
I didn't mean to skip. Mion glared at me silently. Because we were twins, I knew that was just a bluff.
もうここまでやっちゃった以上、私も引っ込みがつかないんで。お姉も私に容赦とか躊躇とかそういうものをあまり期待しない方がいいかもです。
Mion must have been feeling the cold sweat on her face. Although the light was dim, I could tell she was frightened.
じゃあ聞くよ。ひなみ沢村連続開始事件。通称お社様のたたり。
Hmm.
これってどういう意味があるの？ やっぱりダム戦争のけじめってやつ？私は多分そうだと思ってる。
Finally getting answers. We're finally getting some kind of answer to what Oyashiro-sama's curse is all about. Mion sounded a little confused, but she answered. I felt satisfaction now that we were communicating. I continued with a
思
smile.
ってるって言い方が少し頼りないね。そのあたりの事情は詳しくないの？シオンだって分かってるでしょ。次期当主なんてバッチャの取り次ぎに過ぎないよ。
Yeah, right.
その当主様と意思を疎通させて以心伝心なのが次期当主様の役目でしょ。取り次ぎに過ぎないなんて信じると思う？いつも身近にいる私だってたまにバッチャが何を考えてるのかわからない時があるもん。何でもかんでも私が理解してるわけじゃない。じゃあお社様のたたりってのはあいつが全部独断で決めてるわけなんだ。次期当主様と相談して決めてるのかと思ったよ。やばい話は全部バッチャが一人で決めてる。私なんか預かり知る余地もない。でもばあさんの独断だとしたってあいつはあんたを介してやり取りしてるわけでしょ。そのあんたが何も知らないなんてあるはず。違うよ。私なんかを介していない。私にだってよくわからないんだけど、私が陽の部分を取り継いでるとしたら陰の部分を取り継いでる誰かがいると思う。誰？その影の部分の取り継ぎって。
Her father, maybe?
知らない。誰かを招いて話してるとことか電話をしているとことか見たことない？強いて言えば毎年お社様のたたりの時期になると連絡量がどっと増える相手ね。わかんない。心当たりなんかないよ。
Mion shook her head.
まあいいや。じゃあ質問を変えるね。今年のたたりの富武さんと高野さんはダム戦争に直接関係してないのになぜ犠牲に選ばれたの？やっぱり西宮殿に忍び込んだから？
As soon as Mion heard the words ritual storehouse, her expression
西
shifted.
宮殿に？フルテ神社の西宮殿を犯したの？ありゃ、知ってるとばかり。そんなことをしたらバカ、当然だよ。
Mion muttered bitterly while shaking her head repeatedly. Mion's reaction made me realize that the true meaning of the forbidden storehouse for Mion's reaction made me realize the true meaning of the forbidden storehouse for ritual implements. The ritual storehouse is a sacred building, so nobody can go inside. The curse will fall upon any who disobey. Any child would know that rule. However, just because they knew about it didn't mean that they all believed in it. Although they were told they would be cursed, most of the kids actually enjoyed hearing the stories. They simply didn't believe it was true. However, Mion's reaction told me it absolutely was. If they actually did that, of course something would happen to them. She was saying that if someone snuck into the ritual storehouse, that person should be killed.
私がこっちに帰ってきて以降、たまにミヨンとは認識が食い違いますね。そりゃ私だって西宮殿が迂闊に入っちゃやばいとこだってのは知ってますけど、あんな死に方しても当然だってほどやばいとは思わないんだけど。私たちだってその程度の認識じゃなかったでしたっけ？それはシオンがよく知らないだけだよ。すみませんね、よく知らなくて。説明をいただいてもよろしいですか？そりゃシオンの言う通り、子供の世界ではヤバいとかたたりがあるとか言ったってどうせ迷信に過ぎないだろう。でも大人にバレたらかなり怒られるんだろうなって程度の認識だと思う。でもね、ひなみ沢の古老たちにとってはそんな甘いものじゃないの。
Mion explained to me how the elderly people blindly believed in Oyashiro-sama and how how sacred the festivals are to them. Right, that's what I talked about when we were looking at the tips. It's probably something the younger generation would never understand, but they're possessed by a very strong, deeply rooted devotion towards Oyashiro-sama. Mion then went on to tell me about how sinful it was to violate the rule of the ritual storehouse. I just couldn't believe things like that were still going on, even in the modern day. I couldn't even reply appropriately, but even if it was unbelievable, I couldn't ignore what I was hearing from my twin sister.
なるほどね。でもさ、ミオン。たたりで一人が死んだら、それを相殺する意味で一人を生贄にするのがルールじゃなかったっけ。生贄の死体は出ない。なのに今回は二人とも死体が出ちゃってるんだけど。そのあたりはどう見る？
Mion doesn't know that besides Takano and Tomitake, Keiichi and I also snuck into the ritual storehouse, so I try to lead her a little.
確かにおかしいね。高野さんの焼死体は見つかっちゃいけなかったってことなのかな。本当は高野さんは失踪ってことになるのがパーフェクトだったのかな。あるいは自信はないけど。何？根拠なんかいらないから言ってみてよ。怒らないから。
Mion hesitated a little at first, and then started to speak.
最後殿に忍び込んだのは実は4人とか。
So she's lying. As soon as Mion heard the words ritual storehouse, her expression shifted. The ritual storehouse? Did they intrude on the storehouse at the foot of the shrine? Actually, 4 people snuck into the shrine storage, so maybe.
それで？で、もう2人は生贄ってことで鬼隠しになってるんじゃないかな。
This is the halfway mark. Yes, it is. Oh boy, there's still more. Mion's words were stuck in my head. If those 2 dead bodies were the result of the curse, then there should be 2 sacrifices to calm Oyashiro-sama's anger. The 4 of us snuck into the shrine together. It was a simple equation. Did that mean that Keiichi and I were in danger? I got drunk, fell asleep, and decided to stay overnight. Was that because of the alcohol, or did somebody put a drug in my drink? It's not like me to get drunk and spend the night at the hag's house. I wanted to forget about what happened in that eerie storehouse, so I drank too much. But it really was strange for me to get that drunk. Maybe it was a good thing that I woke up in the middle of the night. I could have been the one to wake up in a cell. Right? Sometimes it's hard to recognize danger when you avoid it accidentally. Part of me wanted to just laugh at the idea, but another part felt frightened that I was so close to being in Mion's position. If my thinking was correct, I wondered how Keiichi was doing right now. I didn't see him in any of the cells, but that didn't guarantee his safety. Takano and Tomitake had been executed. There was a possibility that Keiichi could already be dead. But just like what happened to Satoshi, it might only happen after a few days. When the sun rose, I was going to pretend to be Mion and head to her school. I was going to check if Keiichi was safe. If he had already disappeared, then the enemy would come after me next. I'd have to be a decoy for myself. But if he was still safe, I'd need to keep my eyes on him. I was sure the enemy would come after that scatterbrain. If I became Mion, Shion would disappear. The enemy would think Shion had already been demoned away, and they'd concentrate on Keiichi. So then, my original theory that not my original theory, but my updated theory that I had at the start of, this chapter was, if you recall in chapter 2, it's revealed that, quote-unquote, Mion was the person that Keiichi was calling every time he thought he was talking to Shion. Because they were twins, it was hard to believe that at any point, that they could, because they were twins, they could basically pretend to be each other. They could change their voice and sound different. So Keiichi was calling Shion every night. It was revealed that Shion was actually Mion, and now we're learning that Mion the entire time was actually Shion, because Mion was in a cage. And that's something that I mentioned near the end of that little hypothesis, because what ends up happening is, well, Mion tortures Keiichi. Even though she's crying while doing it, she starts torturing him. Meaning that, again, in that moment, she really wanted to torture Mion, who took away Satoshi from her. Which is exactly what I was thinking was probably what happened. And that seems to be the case so far. Anyway. If nothing happened to Keiichi, that would also be fine. It proved that nothing would happen to me either. The hag was still sleeping in the wheelchair. I was going to interrogate her. But actually, I wasn't expecting to learn that much. The woman who was also known as Empress Sonozaki probably wouldn't say a thing even if her fingers were cut off. Mion, her successor, was the complete opposite. She spoke steadily but didn't know too much about anything. Mion had said she was only a messenger, and that somebody else was taking care of problems on the underside. It was possible Mion had grown to be a good liar, and that she tried to deceive me with a straight face. But at the same time, I could see the hag not letting Mion get involved in the underside of the village. If I were her, I wouldn't have used Mion for that either. Unlike me, Mion was a nice person. While there were only ones and zeros in the world, she believed that there were numbers with decimal points. In other words, she could never be cruel. If the hag thought the same way as I do, it was very possible. The one who took care of the problems on the underside, X, was the one who actually governed the curse of Oyashiro-sama. If the hag became concerned about something, X would deal with it, either directly or indirectly. Or maybe the hag and X would discuss the details first. But did X really exist? If he did, his place in the village hierarchy was a lot more important than that of the successor. Unlike Mion, who was too nice, he was discreet, cruel, and cunning. Furthermore, he was extremely close to the hag, someone who would actually have a lot of contact with her just before it was time for the curse. Because of the way Tomitake-san died, it would be somebody who regularly dealt with unusual drugs. He could be a member of a medical institution. No way it's Irie. The director of the Irie clinic. Irie. In this isolated village, Irie was famous for opening such a beautiful clinic, and for working so hard for the villagers' sake. The villagers liked his mature personality, and really respected him. There's nothing scarier than a doctor who's also a murderer. If Irie was the person behind the curse, all the mysterious deaths could be explained. However, there was only a slim chance of Irie being X. The main reason being that the hag wouldn't trust him. Yeah. Like many of the elderly, the hag doesn't like young people. I knew she'd never trust him because of his age. Furthermore, she had openly criticized his behavior among the relatives once. Although Irie was famous, he was an outsider after all. He wasn't born here. He tried to maintain a good relationship with the villagers as the director of the clinic, but that was just on the surface. I couldn't even imagine the hag telling him about her worries, or about the village's underside. If she was suspicious of others as I was, then she'd only gather trustworthy people to deal with that underside. The first people that came to mind were the leaders of the three families. Leaving Rika out of the head of the Kimiyoshi family was a strong possibility. Or leaving Rika out, the head of the Kimiyoshi family was a strong so the mayor, he was the only one who could advise Empress Sonozaki. They were of similar age and everybody knew that they were very close outside the family councils. Interesting. Furthermore, as the mayor, he often went to the Sonozaki house just before the Watanagashi to discuss festival preparations. I could easily picture them talking privately. The one who executed the curse of Oyashiro-sama, the one who murdered Takano and Tomitake, the mastermind behind the series of mysterious deaths that had been going on for the past 5 years, was he coming after me? Did he get to Satoshi? When I thought about Satoshi, I felt elevated. I was fearful of possibly being this year's victim until just a moment ago. I was scared that X was after me. But when I thought about it, I realized, whoever it was, this person had gotten Satoshi. I'd looked so hard, but I couldn't find him. I'd almost forgotten about this enemy. For better or for worse, he was going to appear before me again. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find that enemy. But now he was trying to find me. That was it. I wasn't only being chased, I was chasing too. When I realized all this, I was no longer afraid of dying to the 5th year's curse. It had become a game. I wasn't only being threatened. I was threatening too. Now was the time to settle the score for Satoshi. Now was the time to awaken passions that had grown weak over the past year. I could feel righteous indignation and courage flare up within me. The only emotion that can defeat fear is anger. When my anger completely overtook my fear, I felt as if I were reborn.
鬼ババ様、そろそろ目を覚ましてくださいません?
I kicked her wheelchair rather violently, but that didn't wake her up either.
ひょっとして眠ったふりをしてやり過ごそうとか考えてません?
I grabbed her hair and pulled her head up, but even then the hag still stayed silent with a straight face. Then I noticed something. I looked for an appropriate torture device. They were all large scale, none of them being particularly handy. That's when I saw a cigarette lighter on a cushion in the tatami room. One of the relatives must have left it there. I lit the lighter. A huge flame appeared. I turned the lighter off and went back to the hag with it.
見えてます?見えてない。これ、誰の忘れ物かわかりませんけどね。ライターです。
I lit it in front of her eyes.
今からこれであなたの鼻を焼きます。嫌でしょ?私も嫌です。ですから寝たふりをやめてください。
There was still no response. I put the flame right under her nose without hesitation. The tip of the flame touched the tip of her nose. The flame must have burned her nose hair. It smelled terrible. I was already certain, but I continued anyway. I brought the flame closer to her eye. Her eyelid didn't move one bit. The flame burned her eyelashes, making it smell awful again. I turned the lighter off and then felt her throat and wrist. I didn't feel any warmth. I didn't feel a pulse either.
こいつ、スタンガンで死んだ?
That's probably what you should have checked, like, first. Like, you could check someone's pulse. You could also, like, put your, the back of your hand to, like, the center of her chest and just feel for a heartbeat. And, I get that she probably would have, like, struggled, or, like, if she was pretending, she would have just, like, moved around and, just thrashed about. But there was no way she could pretend to be asleep while being burned. Even if she could endure the pain, anyone would reflexively move their eyelids if a flame came close to their eyes. But she didn't. I turned the sink water on and aimed the end of the hose at the hag's face. The water pressure wasn't too high, but by squeezing the tip of the hose, I could make it squirt out. The water hit the hag in the face, but there was still no reaction. Shit. You've got to be kidding me. She's dead. The one who was at the center of everything is dead now. I knew she wouldn't talk, but I didn't expect her to end up dead. I never even thought of killing her. I walked around the room restlessly. I didn't feel guilty, but instead felt frustrated with what I'd done. Come on. I need to calm down. What do I need to be afraid of? Calm down and stay cool. Calm down, stay cool. I could feel my brain starting to calm down, and my emotions cooling down with it. She was my true enemy. It was just that I killed her before confronting her about it. Sooner or later, I would have killed her anyway. She wouldn't have said anything in the first place, so there wasn't really a reason why I should have let her live. I didn't realize that until now, and that was that was why I got frustrated. My revenge for Satoshi started with the unexpected death of my grandmother. It was such a strange feeling, like I was wearing sopping wet clothes. I replaced that feeling with anger. I couldn't forgive her. I couldn't forgive the hag for abusing the Hojo family, including Satoshi, for so many years. She concerned him psychologically as well as physically. She didn't deserve an easy death from a stun gun. I picked up a whip that was hanging on the wall. The whip was designed to make sure the person on the receiving end got seriously injured. I swung it up and then down. The sound reminded me of when I was a child hitting things with a jump rope when I pretended, with a jump rope I pretended was a whip. But unlike then, I'd made a purple mark on the hag's face, and reddish-black blood started oozing out. I swung it up, and then down again. This time, the whip hit her in the head, her hair flew in the air. I saw a bunch of her hair on the tip of the whip. At the end of the bunch of hair, there was a piece of her skin. Seemed that the whip had ripped part of her scalp off. I continued to hit her with the whip. I didn't bother removing the hair beforehand. The tip of the whip was divided into many points, with each point having a fish hook on the end. Those hooks added to the speed of the whip. Not only scratched the victim, but tore their skin as well. The hag's hair was all messed up, and her face was getting bloody. She'd started to look like a real demon. I stopped the whipping. Not because my arm was tired, but because I couldn't stand the feeling of her hair on the tip touching me every time I swung the whip. I threw the whip up at the hag. Breathing heavily, I realized I was covered in her hair. It almost felt like thousands of maggots crawling all over me. I brushed it off violently. I put my hand on my knees and exhaled roughly. It was then that I noticed it. I perked up and turned around. There it is. The person who had been watching me, since I snuck into the shrine storage. I sensed this person sitting in the tatami room. It enjoyed watching me torture my grandmother. An overwhelming emotion started to swallow me up. I tried desperately not to feel
い
it.
つからそこにいたんだか言ってくれればよかったのに。
It was just there. Just like Satoshi, it was just there. It was extremely uncomfortable to have it just be there.
そっか。レナが言ってたもんね。あんたお社様ってのは。
I smiled boldly, and yet I could feel my body shivering.
冗談じゃない。あんたがお社様で、たたりは本当にお社様のたたりってわけなの？バーカ！誰が信じるかよ。
It was just my imagination. It couldn't be the curse of Oyashiro-sama. The curse couldn't be real. Everything was done by humans. They made everything look like it was a curse.
まあ、あんたが見たいってんなら勝手だけどさ。私は見物料を取るつもりもない。でも、私の邪魔をしようってんなら、あんただって容赦しないよ。
No matter what I said, nothing happened. It was like trying to communicate with an insect. I felt like I was staring at a spider in the middle of its web. The spider was staring back. I turned to the hag in the wheelchair. I couldn't leave her body here forever. If I don't need to make her death known, then it should be quick, and it's best if a body doesn't exist. Not even in this secret underground torture room. I exhaled, trying to calm myself down. Oh, I remember now. When I was a little girl, Kasai used to love making me feel scared. He often told me scary stories about various horrible things. I recalled the story about the secret torture room of the Sonozaki family. According to the story, there was a well in the torture room for dumping bodies in. There was a pile of tortured corpses at the bottom of the well, and resentful moans could be heard echoing from there. About halfway down the well, there was a different tunnel, which was a secret passage leading into the distant mountains. That bit was from Mion's telling of the story. It was probably an amalgamation of tellings from different relatives. The room was supposed to be a huge secret, but everybody got loose lips at the chance to have fun scaring the younger successor.
ミオン、
Or the young successor.
昔親戚の誰かが言ってたじゃん。この地下拷問室のどこかに隠し井戸があって、外へ出られる秘密の通路があるって話。さっきの音は聞こえてなかった？鬼ババを鞭で叩く音。
Mion didn't reply, but I saw her bite her lip.
大丈夫。あんたは叩かない。でもね、あんたが不愉快だと
鬼ババをもっと叩くかもしれない。今度は無知なんかじゃなくて。
そこの奥、暗がりにも牢屋があるでしょう。その中。
Mion pointed weakly. I walked down to where her finger indicated. A light bulb lit up the cell. It was a lot smaller than the one Mion was in. It was very shallow, and I didn't even need to open the door to see how tiny it was. Of course, there's no well here. I became angry, assuming that she lied to me, but after considering it, I didn't actually think she would at this point. I opened the door and walked in. I noticed something immediately. There was an opening right in the middle of the cell. The opening was naturally disguised. The way the rocks and the shadows were positioned perfectly hid the well. The tip of a rock inside of the cell concealed the entrance. Unless you went in, you'd never notice. But it was such a shallow cell that nobody would even think of going in. Besides, the bars allow you to see the inside well enough. The cell is not even a few meters deep, so it would only take a glance to see everything. Nobody would think of unlocking the door and walking in. But walking in was the only way anyone could find the well. Furthermore, there were many cells in this huge cave. Who'd think that one of them was hiding a secret well? The inside of the well was dark. I couldn't see anything. But every little noise I made produced echoes. I could tell this was a very deep well. I brought a flashlight from the torture room and shone it down the well. It almost looked like a vertical tunnel. Obviously, a man made one at that. There were wedges on the wall like a ladder, and they looked as if they were inviting me to descend. It's kind of ironic that the secret escape route from an underground torture room ended up being a well that takes you even further down. You had no way of knowing whether it would take you to freedom or to hell. Furthermore, there were the tortured bodies of past victims at the bottom. Who would be able to go down this well without hesitation? Nobody in their right mind could go down this well to look for a secret tunnel, hearing the voices of the dead all the while.
ミオンはあの井戸降りたことあるの？降りたくもない。
それに関しては著しく同感。この拷問室の犠牲者たちが放り込まれた井戸になんか好き好んで降りたくはないもんね。
I went back to the torture room and then returned to the cave, pushing the wheelchair containing the hag. Mion screamed.
シオン、バッチャを落とす気？
落とすんじゃないよ。捨てるんだよ。もう死んでるしね。さっきの拷問で死んだんじゃないよ。多分鬼ババはスタンガンで死んだんだよ。心臓麻痺とかで。放置してもいいけど、虫が湧くと嫌でしょ？
ひどい。
なんなら死後の鬼ババの世話もする？湧いてくるウジを箸でつまんで捨てるとかやってみる？
Mion covered her ears and shook her head. Everything I said seemed to bother Mion. Her own life wasn't guaranteed at this point.
シオン、どうしてこんなことを？
さーて、どうしてだと思います？
Nobody said anything for a while, but the silence was soon broken.
サトシ、敵討ちってこと？
敵討ちになったかもわからないけどね。いきなり後ろからバチンだったから、何が何やらわかんないうちにご臨終だったろうし。ねえミオン、今こうして思い返すと、私はやっぱりばあさんを殺すだけの理由があったように思うの。なぜかわかる？単にサトシ君を殺した張本人だからってだけじゃないよ。それは嘘をついたから。
I slapped the hag's head.
あんたも言ったよね。私が爪を剥がせば全て許すって。だから私は爪を剥がしたんだよ。3枚も。それでけじめがついたってことになったんだよね。でも約束は守られなかった。サトシ君はやっぱり消されてしまった。どうして？どういうことなの？
I continued to slap the hag's head. Her blood was all over my hand by then, and it felt gross. I tried to wipe it off on her clothes, but then her hair got on my hand. I ran to the sink in the torture room and washed my hands with a brush. When I was done, I went back to Mion's cell.
あの時、サトシ君がいなくなってしまった後、あんたが来て言ったよね。サトシ君と私の関係は、けじめがもうついてたって。そしてこうも言ったよね。サトシ君の失踪の理由は、園崎本家は何も知らないと。
うん。 嘘だ。
Lied, 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 lied. My shouts echoed throughout the cave. I was breathing heavily. I felt like I used up all the air in my
あん
lungs.
たが何も知らないのは本当だと思う。あんた自身、ばあさんに真の意味で信頼を得ていたかは怪しいからね。でも、ばあさんが本当に私のけじめでサトシ君を許したかはわからないよ。アマちゃんのあんたに本当のところを打ち明けるわけもない。
The hag didn't keep her promise. She said she'd forgiven everyone, but she lied. She didn't forgive. She didn't forgive Satoshi.
嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき。返してサトシ君、返してよサトシ君、返して返して返して返して。
I kicked the hag's leg repeatedly. Each time I kicked, the wheelchair made a squeaky noise. Ran out of breath and kneeled down. Mion was still covering her ears and was now shaking. There were tears in her
怖
eyes.
がらせちゃったね。ごめんごめん。ミオンがミオンの言うように何も知らなかったなら、ミオン安心して。でも、もしミオンも嘘をついていたなら仕方ない。その時は、どういう目に遭わされても仕方ない。仕方ないよね。
Oh boy. What a chapter. Page 183 and 185. Let me save real quick. And we'll take a quick look. So, notebook page 183. I wasn't planning to kill the hag so quickly. I was going to kill her anyway, but it was too soon. People would normally assume that Sanosuke family operates as a hierarchy, but that's not true. It's actually more like a system of government. Several ministries stem from the main family, and each forms a hierarchy of their own. The ministries don't communicate with one another. The people who belong to a given ministry don't know what the other ministries are doing. That way the Sanosuke family's dealings are kept perfectly secret. Of course, the most important people in the family got several ministries. They know, of course, about their own ministries, and they know a little bit about the ministries and their relatives run. But none of them know everything. There are ministries that work in the open. There are ministries that work unseen, and there are some smaller ones that Audio runs herself. Mion seems to know about most of them, but she doesn't necessarily know about them all. In fact, she didn't know about the curse. Considering that, the fact that the hag died before I could interrogate her is a huge loss. Right. And let's look at page 185. The head of the Kimiyoshi family was the one who called the main house most often after the fifth year's curse. My father called second most. My parents were still high in the hierarchy, but the stir caused by my mother's disownment still hung over us, so we got treated as outcasts. So the fact that my father received so many calls proved how much the hag valued us, despite the distance at which we were kept, demonstrating her own two-faced respect for both sides of the coin. My father seemed to be in charge of the intelligence bureau. He reported police information, gossip, and rumors going around in the Yakuza business to the hag. He silences, stirs, and distorts that information at her request. By the way, my servant Kasai is an old friend of my father's. That must be why Kasai knows many things. But I don't know if my father is involved in the curse's execution. My assumption is that although he gathered information on the police investigation about the case, he wasn't involved in the execution itself. The fact that my father and the hag have this close connection isn't widely known. People know that she uses his information network, but they don't look very far beyond that. In the same way, it's possible that a curse execution team exists under the hag's direct control. People just aren't aware of it. Interesting. What a pair of chapters these were. Holy fuck. So seems like a lot of the stuff that I was thinking in the back of my mind ended up being true. Because I remember mentioning specifically at some point early in the chapter, being like, what if the Mion that we thought was actually the Shion that we thought that was the Mion that we thought that was the Shion that we thought that was the Shion that we thought was the Mion that we thought was the Mion that we thought was the Shion that we thought was Mion was actually Shion the whole time. Something along those lines. And looks like that was true. But anyway, I think this is a good stopping point for tonight. So let's swap on over to the ending screen real quick.